The invitation arrived on a gray Tuesday evening in early November, delivered by a silent courier who didn't wait for a signature. It came in a matte black envelope, heavy in my hand, with a single silver embossed symbol, two interlocking circles, and a key. No stamp, no return address, just my wife's name written in elegant silver script, Lisa Harrington. I stood in the hallway of our two-story suburban home outside Seattle, the warm light from the pendant lamp casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The scent of garlic and rosemary from the roast chicken I had just pulled from the oven still lingered in the air. Rain tapped steadily against the windows, a constant Pacific Northwest rhythm that usually comforted me. Tonight, it felt ominous. Lisa came down the stairs, her bare feet silent on the carpet. She was still in her work clothes, a tailored charcoal blouse and black trousers, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. At 39, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that had first drawn me to her in college. "What's that?" she asked, nodding at the envelope. I handed it to her. "Came for you." She opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a thick card with the same silver symbol and a short message. "You have been personally selected for an exclusive gathering. Friday, 8 p.m. Address provided upon confirmation. Discretion required." A QR code sat at the bottom. Lisa's lips curved into a small, intrigued smile. "Interesting. Probably one of those high-end networking events for marketing executives. My firm has been talking about private salons lately." I watched her face closely. "You're going?" She looked up, eyes steady. "Why wouldn't I? Opportunities like this don't come often." She stepped closer, placed a soft kiss on my cheek. The familiar scent of her jasmine perfume mixed with the faint trace of rain on her skin from her commute. "Don't worry, Adam. It's just professional." That was the first lie I would later recognize. The next 3 days passed in a blur of ordinary life. I'm Adam Harrington, 41 years old, senior structural engineer at Pacific Bridge Design. We had been married 14 years. Sophie, our 11-year-old daughter, filled the house with her energetic stories about middle school orchestra. Ethan, 9, was quieter, always building intricate Lego cities in the sunroom, while our tabby cat Whiskers supervised from the windowsill. Friday evening arrived. Lisa spent longer than usual getting ready. I sat on the edge of our bed, watching her apply makeup in the soft glow of the vanity lights. The bathroom door was open, steam from her shower still fogging the mirror. She chose a sleek black dress I hadn't seen before, elegant, slightly more revealing than her usual work attire. The fabric whispered against her skin as she moved. "You look beautiful," I said. She smiled at me through the mirror. "Thank you. It's important to make a good impression." At the front door, she adjusted her coat, the cool night air rushing in as she opened it. Rain had eased into a light mist. "Don't wait up, okay? These things can run late." "I love you." She leaned in, her lips brushing mine. A kiss that felt routine, almost automatic. I watched her taillights disappear down the wet street, red reflections stretching across the asphalt. The house felt unnaturally quiet after she left. Sophie and Ethan were at a sleepover with friends. Whiskers curled on the couch, purring softly. I tried to watch a documentary, but my mind kept drifting. By 1:30 a.m., unease had settled deep in my chest like cold stone. I grabbed my keys and coat. The address from the QR code led me to an old converted warehouse in the industrial district south of the city. Dim amber lights glowed from high windows. Low, pulsing music drifted into the damp night air. I parked a block away and approached on foot, heart pounding. Slipping through a side service entrance used by catering staff, I moved through dimly lit corridors until I found a metal staircase leading to a viewing balcony overlooking the main hall. The space below had been transformed. Velvet drapes, low lighting, scattered intimate seating areas, and a long bar glowing with expensive bottles. About 60 people mingled, all well-dressed, conversations hushed. Then I saw her. Lisa stood in a semi-private alcove near the far wall, talking with a tall, sharply dressed man in his early 40s. His dark hair was neatly styled, jaw strong, posture relaxed and confident. Marcus. I would learn his name later. They weren't touching overtly, but their body language told a different story. Lisa's head was tilted slightly toward him, her usual reserved posture softened. She laughed at something he said, a genuine, light laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. His hand rested briefly on her lower back as he leaned in to speak closer to her ear. The gesture was intimate, familiar. My stomach twisted violently. This wasn't networking. This was connection, deep, emotional, and clearly not their first meeting. I stood frozen on the balcony, the cold metal railing biting into my palms. The music pulsed below, but all I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. In that moment, something fundamental in my perception of our marriage cracked open. This wasn't a one-time party. I could feel it in my bones. The opening section traces how a single mysterious invitation triggered a chain of small but significant behaviors that rapidly escalated underlying marital tensions. Lisa's careful handling of the envelope, her extra preparation time, choice of a new dress, and reassuring yet slightly distant kiss set the first links in the chain. Adam's decision to follow her, driven by instinct rather than concrete evidence, represents the moment ordinary trust began transforming into active suspicion. This escalation is psychologically realistic. The contrast between the warm, familiar domestic environment, roast chicken smells, children's laughter earlier in the week, familiar perfume, and the shadowy, exclusive party creates immediate emotional dissonance. Lisa's lies, though small and plausible at first, normalize secrecy and emotional compartmentalization. Adam's internal physical reactions, tight chest, racing heart, illustrate the body's early stress response to perceived threat to attachment. The scene establishes the central infidelity axis while planting seeds for interconnected subplots. Lisa's marketing career providing cover, the children's absence creating opportunity, and the subtle shift in her demeanor hinting at unmet emotional needs. Every subsequent suspicion will trace back to this night, demonstrating how one seemingly innocuous event can unravel years of assumed stability. The sensory richness, rain, lights, perfume, music, makes the betrayal feel viscerally invasive, turning the reader's unease into the protagonist's. The weekend after the party, life tried to return to normal. Saturday morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds, warming the oak table where Sophie practiced her violin scales and Ethan built a new Lego bridge. The smell of pancakes and fresh coffee filled the air. Lisa moved through the kitchen with practiced grace, flipping pancakes, laughing at Sophie's jokes. She seemed lighter, more animated than she had in recent months. Yet small cracks were already visible if you knew where to look. She checked her phone frequently, angling the screen away from me. Once, a notification lit up, a message preview that vanished too quickly. When I asked casually what it was, she smiled smoothly. Just work. A new campaign brief came in. Her energy felt redirected. She spoke more about team dynamics and creative brainstorming sessions than she had in years. On Monday evening, she came home later than usual, cheeks slightly flushed, carrying the faint trace of a woody, masculine cologne mixed with her jasmine perfume. The scent clung to her coat as she hung it in the closet. Long strategy meeting, she explained, kissing my cheek quickly. The team really clicked tonight. I nodded, stirring the pasta sauce on the stove, the rich tomato and basil aroma rising around us. But something felt off, the way her eyes didn't quite hold mine, the slight tension in her shoulders. Red herrings appeared almost immediately. One afternoon, I found a receipt in her bag for an expensive cocktail bar downtown. When I mentioned it lightly during dinner, she laughed. Oh, that was with Rachel. My sister needed a girls' night. You know how dramatic she gets about her divorce. Rachel had indeed been coming around more often lately, staying late for sister talks on the back porch, their voices low, cigarette smoke drifting through the screen door. Our physical intimacy, once comfortable and regular, began cooling. Touches became briefer. Nights when we used to linger in conversation now ended with Lisa turning away, murmuring about exhaustion from work. When we did make love, her responses felt present but emotionally distant, as if part of her was somewhere else. The children started noticing subtle shifts. Sophie asked one evening while we folded laundry together, the fresh scent of detergent in the air, "Why does Mom seem happier when she comes home from work than when she's with us?" The question landed like a quiet punch. Ethan, more sensitive, became clingier at bedtime, asking me to read extra chapters, his small body pressed against mine as if seeking reassurance. One Wednesday night, Lisa announced another exclusive industry gathering. It's invitation only again, she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. Very selective. Good for my career. I offered to drop her off. She declined politely but firmly. No need. Parking is valet only. That night, I stayed awake, the house creaking softly around me, Whiskers snoring on the armchair. When she returned at 2:17 a.m., her hair slightly mussed, makeup touched up imperfectly, she slipped into bed carefully. I pretended to sleep, but the faint scent of cologne on her skin confirmed what I already feared. Small mysteries accumulated. Varying routes home logged in the car's navigation history, deleted call logs, a new password on her laptop because of increased hacking attempts at the firm. Each explanation sounded reasonable in isolation. Together, they painted a picture of someone living a double life. Yet I still hesitated. 14 years of marriage, 2 children, a shared history. It was easier to believe I was overthinking, projecting stress from my own demanding projects at work. Until the second invitation arrived. Here explores Adam's deepening internal conflict between his long-held identity as a stable, trusting husband and the growing fear that he is being replaced emotionally. He engages in emotional substitution, explaining away Lisa's changes as work stress or normal marital seasons, to protect the family unit and his own sense of self-worth. Lisa, meanwhile, appears caught between her roles as wife/mother and a woman seeking validation and excitement she feels is missing at home, leading to compartmentalization and subtle withdrawal. The sister Rachel's increased presence introduces a loyalty subplot and possible enabling behavior, adding layers of hidden motives that confuse Adam's perception of reality. Children's innocent observations act as emotional amplifiers, raising the stakes and triggering Adam's protective instincts while simultaneously deepening his guilt and confusion. Psychologically realistic details, microexpressions, scent changes, posture shifts, and the contrast between warm domestic sensory cues, pancakes, laundry, bedtime stories, and the cold intrusion of secrecy, illustrate how betrayal erodes daily life from within. The red herrings serve Lisa's need to maintain control and Adam's need to delay painful confrontation. This part shows the painful dissonance between past emotional closeness and present distance, building the slow-burn tension that defines realistic betrayal narratives. Suspicion did not arrive suddenly. It seeped into my life like the cold Pacific Northwest mist that settles over everything, making it hard to see clearly. Workdays became a struggle. I sat under the sterile fluorescent lights of my office, staring at structural blueprints for a new bridge project. But my mind kept drifting back to that warehouse balcony. The image of Lisa laughing softly with that tall, confident man haunted me. Her posture had been different, more open, more alive than I had seen in years. I told myself it was just networking, just a professional connection. But the doubt had taken root. At home, the ordinary rhythms continued, yet everything felt slightly off-key. Mornings still smelled of fresh coffee and toasted bagels. Sophie would practice her violin in the living room, the notes floating through the house, while Ethan built elaborate Lego structures in the sunroom, Whiskers watching from the windowsill with half-closed eyes. Lisa moved through these routines with practiced ease, but I began noticing the micro-changes. She checked her phone more often, always angling the screen away from me. Her smile seemed brighter when she talked about work, but they faded quickly when our eyes met. One Tuesday evening, she returned home later than usual. The scent of rain mixed with something else on her coat, a woody, masculine cologne that wasn't mine. When she hugged me, the smell lingered on her skin. Long strategy session, she explained, hanging her coat in the closet. The team is working on a big campaign launch. You know how it is. I nodded, stirring the chili on the stove, the spicy aroma filling the warm kitchen. You seem to be enjoying these late nights more than usual. She paused for a fraction of a second, then smiled. It's energizing. I feel more creative lately. Her answer sounded reasonable, but her fingers twisted her wedding ring. A small, unconscious gesture I had started to recognize. Red herrings kept appearing, cleverly planted. One Saturday afternoon, while Lisa was in the shower, I noticed a receipt on the kitchen counter for a downtown lounge. 2 cocktails. When I asked her about it casually over dinner, the clink of forks against plates punctuating the moment, she laughed lightly. Oh, that was with Rachel. She's going through a rough patch with her divorce and needed someone to talk to. We had a quick drink after work. Rachel, Lisa's younger sister, had indeed been visiting more frequently. She would sit with Lisa on the back porch late into the evening, their voices low, the glow of Rachel's cigarette occasionally illuminating their faces in the cool night air. Once, I overheard Rachel say softly, "You deserve to feel desired again, Lise. Don't feel guilty for wanting more." Those words lodged in my mind like a splinter. Financial clues began surfacing too. Small, unexplained ATM withdrawals appeared on our joint account statements, amounts too modest to raise immediate alarms, but frequent enough to notice. When I mentioned them one morning while the smell of scrambled eggs and toast filled the kitchen, Lisa shrugged. "Just cash for parking and little things at work. Cards get declined sometimes in the garage. You know how it is." Her explanation was smooth, but she avoided my eyes as she buttered her toast. The children started sensing the tension. Sophie became quieter, watching us with careful eyes. One evening while we were folding laundry together, the fresh scent of detergent surrounding us, she asked, "Dad, why does Mom look happier when she comes home from work than when she's here?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I forced a smile. "Work has been exciting for her lately, sweetheart." Ethan grew more clingy. He insisted on longer bedtime stories, his small hand gripping my shirt as if afraid something was about to break. Another exclusive gathering invitation arrived 2 weeks later. This time Lisa was more prepared in her response. "It's invitation only again. Very selective. Good for my career progression," she said while applying lipstick in the hallway mirror, the soft light catching the determination in her eyes. I offered to drive her. She declined politely but firmly. "Valet parking only. Don't worry, Adam. I'll be fine." That night, after she left, I couldn't stay home. I drove to the same industrial area and parked in the shadows. From a discreet vantage point, I watched her arrive. She met the same man, Marcus, outside the venue. They embraced briefly, not like colleagues, but with comfortable familiarity. Inside, through a partially covered window, I saw them in deep conversation. His hand rested lightly on her arm as she spoke, her face animated in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. It wasn't physical cheating I witnessed that night. It was emotional intimacy, deep, effortless, and clearly ongoing. When Lisa returned home at 2:40 a.m., I pretended to be asleep. She slipped into bed carefully, her breathing slightly uneven. In the darkness, the faint trace of his cologne still clung to her. I lay there for hours, the rain tapping against the window, my mind racing through possibilities. Was this just an emotional affair? Or had it already crossed physical boundaries? Every explanation I tried to construct felt increasingly fragile. Suspicion had become my constant companion, coloring every conversation, every touch, every silence with doubt and quiet dread. The walls of our marriage were cracking, and I could no longer pretend they were solid. At this stage highlights how cognitive biases and self-deception operate powerfully during the early stages of suspected betrayal. Adam engages in selective attention, noticing small inconsistencies, scent of cologne, phone behavior, ring twisting, while still desperately grasping at Lisa's plausible explanations to preserve his long-held belief in a stable marriage. This creates intense cognitive dissonance. The mind wants to protect the familiar narrative of "we're fine," even as evidence mounts. Lisa employs her own self-justifying narratives, framing her late nights and new connections as career growth and feeling creative, which allows her to maintain her identity as a devoted wife and mother while pursuing emotional validation elsewhere. The sister Rachel's comments introduce ambiguity and possible enabling, exploiting Adam's natural bias toward trusting family. The children's innocent observations act as unwelcome reality checks that intensify Adam's internal conflict. Red herrings, such as the lounge receipt explained as sister time, provide temporary emotional relief, demonstrating how the betrayed partner oscillates between denial and hypervigilance. Sensory cues, smells, lighting, gestures, and microbehaviors reinforce the growing gap between words and actions. This part realistically shows how small mysteries accumulate into a devastating realization, with every apparent innocent explanation becoming another layer of self-deception that delays the painful truth. I crossed an invisible line the moment I decided to gather proof instead of confronting Lisa immediately. The decision brought both relief and heavy guilt. Spying on my own wife felt like its own form of betrayal, yet the accumulating inconsistencies left me no peace. I began methodically. While Lisa was in the shower one morning, I carefully checked her phone. Most messages were deleted, but I found a hidden folder with a second messaging app. A few fragments remained. Last night was exactly what I needed. When can we disappear again? The sender was saved only as M. My hands trembled as I took screenshots. Financial investigation revealed more. Small transfers to an unknown account appeared in our statements. When I confronted her gently about unusual spending, she explained it away as a flexible savings fund for the kids' future activities. Her voice was calm, but her posture stiffened. Rachel's role grew more suspicious. She began staying over more often, helping with the kids, but I caught her once quickly closing Lisa's laptop when I entered the room. "Just checking something for her," she said with a tight smile. A major red herring nearly derailed me. I found a hotel key card in Lisa's purse. When I asked, she produced old emails showing it was from a legitimate work conference 3 months earlier. The relief I felt was enormous, until new evidence appeared days later. I started tracking the car's mileage and GPS history. The routes showed frequent detours to a quiet neighborhood on the north side. One afternoon, I followed at a safe distance. Lisa met Marcus at a discreet cafe. I watched from across the street as they sat in deep conversation, their body language intimate and familiar. No overt touching in public, but the emotional connection was undeniable. The double twist came gradually. What I first believed was purely emotional cheating slowly revealed layers. Through careful recovery of deleted messages, using a backup I had access to, I discovered occasional private hotel meetings and intimate conversations that went beyond emotional support. Marcus had also been advising Lisa on securing her financial independence, which explained the secret account. This intersected with a painful truth of my own. Years ago, during a severe work burnout, I had emotionally withdrawn for nearly 6 months. I became distant, buried in projects, leaving Lisa feeling unseen. I had never fully acknowledged how deeply that period had affected her. The children remained indirect catalysts. Sophie once found a handwritten note in Lisa's bag with Marcus's initials and a poetic line. She brought it to me, confused. "What does this mean, Dad?" The innocence in her voice nearly broke me. Moral dilemmas tormented me nightly. Was I becoming the villain by secretly gathering evidence? Yet every new discovery reinforced that Lisa had been living a double life for months. One cold December evening, after Lisa left for another gathering, I sat at the kitchen table with all the printed evidence spread before me: screenshots, financial records, GPS logs, recovered messages. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the heater and whiskers purring on the chair. The weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on my shoulders. I had quietly moved funds into a separate account and consulted a lawyer discreetly. I was no longer just discovering the truth. I was preparing for the end of our marriage. Gathering proof reveals classic defense mechanisms at work. Adam uses intellectualization, turning raw pain into systematic investigation, documentation, and financial protection to manage overwhelming anxiety and betrayal trauma. This allows him to feel some control in a situation where he otherwise feels powerless. Guilt over his own past emotional withdrawal introduces rationalization and self-blame, complicating his sense of moral superiority. Lisa likely relies on compartmentalization and denial, maintaining 2 separate realities: the devoted wife and mother at home, and the woman seeking excitement and validation outside. Rachel's actions suggest a protective defense of family loyalty through concealment. Here demonstrates how these mechanisms delay confrontation while evidence accumulates. Red herrings and partial truths provide temporary psychological safety, but the growing weight of contradictions creates increasing internal pressure. Sensory details of the quiet house and the physical act of spreading evidence on the table highlight the lonely, heavy nature of this stage. Adam shifts from passive victim to active agent, though the process extracts a significant emotional cost. This realistic portrayal shows how the psyche protects itself until the accumulated truth becomes impossible to avoid. The confrontation happened on a cold, rainy Sunday evening in January. The children were at a sleepover with friends, leaving the house unusually silent. I had laid out every piece of evidence on the dining table under the warm glow of the pendant light: printed messages, financial records, GPS logs, photographs, and timelines. Lisa walked in from the garage, shaking rain from her coat, the scent of wet wool and her jasmine perfume filling the entryway. She froze when she saw the documents. "Adam, what is all this?" My voice was quieter than I expected. "This is the truth I've been living with for months. The secret parties. Marcus. The emotional affair that crossed physical boundaries. The lies about networking and late meetings. The secret account. How long has this been going on, Lisa?" She sank slowly into a chair, her face draining of color. For a long moment, only the sound of rain against the windows filled the room. Her hands trembled as she picked up one of the printed messages. At first, she tried to deflect. "You spied on me. You invaded my privacy." Her voice rose with anger, but it cracked with fear. "I didn't want to believe it," I replied. "But you left me no choice. Every time I asked, you lied." Tears welled in her eyes. "It started as friendship. He listened when you stopped. You were so distant after your burnout. I felt invisible. Marcus made me feel seen again, desired." The conversation grew raw and painful. She admitted the emotional connection had become physical on a few occasions, but insisted it was never about leaving me. "I never stopped loving you, Adam. I was just lost." I told her how her lies had shattered my trust, how the children had sensed the distance, how I had spent months in silent agony. She countered with my emotional withdrawal years ago, and for the first time, I fully acknowledged my role in creating the space she had filled elsewhere. Rachel's involvement came out too. She had known enough to offer cover, fearing a family breakup. The discussion was not loud screaming or thrown objects. It was exhausted, heavy honesty mixed with grief and anger. Lisa reached for my hand at one point, her touch now feeling foreign. I pulled away gently. "I've already spoken with a lawyer," I said finally. "I've secured what I need to protect the children and myself. I want a divorce." Her face crumpled. The devastation in her eyes was real. "Please, we can try to fix this." "I can't live in a marriage built on deception anymore," I replied. "Not for me, and not for the kids." We sat in heavy silence as the rain slowly eased outside. The confrontation brought no catharsis, only painful clarity that our marriage, as it once existed, was over. The confrontation is driven by accumulated emotions. Adam's grief, anger, and hard-won self-respect propel him to present undeniable evidence calmly yet firmly. Lisa's actions, initial defensiveness turning to tears and pleas, stem from shame, fear of loss, and lingering attachment. Key emotional triggers include the tangible proof and references to the children's pain, which intensify the psychological stakes for both. Jealousy and betrayal trauma fuel Adam's boundary setting, while Lisa's unmet needs for validation and feeling seen explain both her original affair and her desperate attempts to regain control. The scene captures realistic tension through micro-expressions, trembling hands, cracked voices, and heavy silences rather than melodrama. Power dynamics shift as Adam moves from silent suffering to decisive action. The collision of all threads, the secret parties, emotional and physical betrayal, financial secrecy, Rachel's enabling, and past mutual failures, creates an inevitable breaking point. This part shows how long-suppressed emotions eventually demand expression, leading to irreversible decisions. The months that followed were among the hardest of my life. Divorce proceedings moved forward with painful civility. We sold the family home to divide assets fairly, though the hidden account created tension resolved through mediation. Lisa moved into a modern apartment closer to her office downtown. I found a smaller but peaceful house nearby with a backyard where the kids could play. Co-parenting required constant effort. Handoffs at neutral locations, polite but guarded conversations, and learning to navigate holidays separately tested every ounce of maturity we had left. Sophie and Ethan asked difficult questions. Why can't we all live together anymore? Forcing us to give age-appropriate answers about grown-up mistakes and the importance of honesty. I experienced waves of grief, anger, and self-doubt. Some nights I barely slept, replaying conversations in my head. Therapy became essential. Running along misty forest trails near my new home, The cold air sharp in my lungs and the scent of pine surrounding me brought moments of clarity and peace. Gradually, empowerment replaced devastation. I rebuilt routines that were truly mine. I deepened friendships that had been neglected and discovered hobbies I had set aside years ago. For the first time in over a decade, my life felt like it belonged to me. In one final honest conversation with Lisa several months later, we both acknowledged our contributions to the breakdown. She admitted the affair had been a misguided attempt to reclaim a sense of self she felt she had lost in the routines of marriage and motherhood. I owned my emotional withdrawal during my burnout period. There was no dramatic reconciliation, but a fragile, respectful co-parenting relationship began to form for the sake of Sophie and Ethan. The children showed remarkable resilience. They adapted to the new normal, thriving in school and extracurriculars. Their strength humbled me daily. Looking back, I realized that trust can break irreparably, but resilience can rebuild something new, perhaps wiser and more authentic. Life moved on quietly. The chapter had closed, but I was finally ready to write the next one on my own terms. This story ultimately reveals a universal truth about relationships. Betrayal rarely emerges from nowhere. It grows from accumulated emotional distance, unaddressed needs, and small deceptions that slowly erode trust. Lisa's secret parties and double life were symptoms of deeper longings for validation and excitement, while Adam's past withdrawal created space that another man filled. The narrative shows how easily compartmentalization and self-justifying narratives allow people to maintain contradictory realities until the truth becomes undeniable. Adam's journey from shock and obsessive evidence gathering to quiet empowerment illustrates that healing after betrayal requires more than confrontation. It demands personal accountability, firm boundaries, and the courage to choose self-respect over familiar comfort. The involvement of children highlights how parental secrets create invisible burdens on the next generation, while Rachel's enabling behavior demonstrates how loyalty can complicate truth. The broader lesson is clear. Prevention lies in consistent emotional presence and honest communication, not in assuming stability will maintain itself. Once trust is shattered, full restoration is rare, but individuals can emerge stronger through resilience and self-discovery. In the end, seeing painful truth, however devastating, offers liberation. It frees one to build a more authentic life, grounded in reality rather than illusion. Nearly 30 to 40% of marriages face infidelity, yet each story reminds us that real strength is found not in avoiding pain, but in how we choose to rebuild after it.